Last week there was a bit of confusion surrounding the Andretti team. The team owner, Michael, who is the son of Mario and the father of Marco, and now a grandfather as it so happens, abruptly left said team. And with Michael so intent on entering Formula 1 with his own Formula 1 team, it was all a bit confusing. So, what gives? And the whole Andretti wants in but can't come in because of F1's commercial rights holders thing has been done to death. Can you hear that? That's the sound of F1 content creators scraping the bottom of the barrel in this almost month-long break. But I'm sure we're due another one of those stories, because it's been one of the 3 or 4 big stories of the last 12 to 18 months, along with the Red Bull drop-off, the alleged text messages, Newy's next destination as a car designer, and what's been going on with Daniel Ricciardo. That's actually 5 stories. You know, I can't count. You've probably realised this by now. But with 2 of those stories coming to a close very recently, another has had a major development that is completely the opposite of what people would have expected, and I think it's caused a bit of confusion. So as mentioned in the opening paragraph of this video, Michael Andretti has relinquished his ownership role at Andretti Global, but reports are he'll still be a major part of the company as an ambassador and advisor. It ends about 22 years of Andretti being the head of the group, and his new role in the company will be strategic rather than operational. What that means remains to be seen. Andretti has put out a statement saying something like, "We'll know more in about a week or so," and that might put to bed some of the rumours and speculation that have been appearing on the internet, like he's been ousted, hostile takeover, selling out to corporations, and so on. So how did it arrive at this point? Because in recent years Andretti has been expanding quite substantially, and it all starts back in 2002. Sort of. In 1993, Gerald Forsyth and Barry Green formed Forsyth Green Racing, and this was known as Team Green for a time, as Barry and his brother Kim ran the operation. Forsyth had first been in IndyCar, then known as the Kart PPG World Series, in 1983, when he ran a car driven by Teo Fabi. This new team, set up in 1993, ran in a kart development series called the Toyota Atlantic Championship, before moving up into the kart series proper, backed by the Canadian Tobacco Company players and fielding Claude Bourbonnais and Jacques Villeneuve. Villeneuve would then win the 1995 Indy 500 and Kart Championship before departing to join Frank Williams' Formula 1 operation. As a bonus fact, the partnership of Hill and Villeneuve at Williams in 1996 was the first time that 2 sons of previous Formula 1 drivers had been partnered together. The second time this happened would also be at Williams in 2007, when it was Nico Rosberg and Kazuki Nakajima. When the American open-wheel civil war started in 1996 with the birth of the Indy Racing League, Forsyth, or Team Players as it was known, and Team Green opted to stay with kart, instead of joining Tony George's All-American League. An All-American League that had a Dutch guy, a Colombian and Michele Alboreto on the grid, but we'll just gloss over that. And Team Green and Forsyth continued with the big boys like Ganassi, Penske and so on. While in kart, the likes of Dario Franchitti, Patrick Carpentier, Alex Tagliani, Paul Tracy and Maple Ridge, British Columbia's Greg Moore, Red Gloves rule, all drove for the team. As kart's fortunes started to drop off after 2001, the reasons for which we've looked at in dedicated videos, but I'll just recap, so the Texas Motor Speedway GeForce fiasco, the cancelled race in Brazil, the European tour that coincided with 9/11, and on that same tour, Alex Zanardi lost his legs in one of the most utterly violent crashes I've ever seen. That and Dan Weldon's. As an aside, just as some behind the scenes stuff, when it comes to fatal accidents, if it's been caught on camera, I've watched it so I can talk about it in a video. Dan Weldon and Alex Zanardi are by far the most violent crashes I've ever seen, although it's not a competition. Just after the catastrophe of the 2001 kart season, Andretti had bought into the Forsyth Green operation, taking a majority interest in the Team Green side in 2002 and shifting them to the Indy Racing League for 2003. Forsyth carried on in kart through its final season and won the series with Paul Tracy taking the honours. After which, Forsyth became one of the team owners that bought the kart assets back so they could continue as the Champ Car World Series. Meanwhile, Andretti Green, as it was now known, carried on in the All-American Indy Racing League in 2003. An All-American Racing Series that was won by a Kiwi with 3 Brazilians forming up behind him, and the highest placed American was 5th. This is just how much of a joke that open-wheel racing civil war was, but at least they were still running on all ovals at this point. 2005 they went back to road and street circuits, apparently, at least that's what I gather from looking through the stats. 2005 was the year that St. Petersburg, Sonoma and Watkins Glen came on or back, but you know what I mean. After the 2003 Indy 500, Michael retired completely from racing, and he raced in the 2003 Indy 500 so he could race with his son, Marco. And Marco almost won the race and almost broke the Andretti curse, but Sam Hornish Jr. only just pipped him. It's like the second closest finish in, not F1 history, Indy 500 history. I get confused between the sports. I mainly do Formula 1 stuff. Following this, Andretti started to achieve some success. In 2004, Tony Kanaan would win the IndyCar Series, followed by Dan Wheldon in 2005. Franchitti would win in 2007, and Ryan Hunter-Reay took to date the last championship for Andretti in 2012. On top of this, the team has 5 Indy 500 wins. Wheldon in 2005, Franchitti in 2007, Hunter-Reay in 2014, Alex Rossi in 2016, and Takuma Sato, the most recent, in 2017. After 2017, Andretti saw some expansion. The expansion came about thanks to some investment from something called Group 1001 or 1001 and its CEO Dan Tauris. One of Tauris' businesses called Gamebridge started sponsoring the Zach Veach car in 2018, and even though the sponsorship for Veach ended prematurely, Tauris started investing heavily in the Andretti operation. Now, Colton Herta's car is covered with Gamebridge logos, while another Group 1001 company, Delaware Life, is on Marcus Ericsson's car. The group as a whole has the already mentioned Gamebridge Investment Company and Delaware Life Pension Company, as well as ClearSpring, which is life insurance I think, and they've also got ClearSpring Health, which is something like over 60s Medicare. There's a third ClearSpring company called ClearSpring Life, which functions a little bit like Gamebridge, and they've also got the RVI Group, which is Specialty Insurance Products and Financial Solutions. And with that investment, their first point of expansion came, of all places, Straya. Andretti, now called Andretti Autosport, bought into the Holden racing team to rename it Walkinshaw Andretti United. Walkinshaw, now run by Ryan Walkinshaw, who is Tom's son, ran the Holden racing team, but the name was going to get transferred to AAA Motorsport. Yeah, the whole thing is a bit confusing. The team shouldn't have technically existed anyway. It was at one point called the Holden Dealer Team because GM wouldn't allow subsidiary companies to run their own factory racing teams, so it was the dealer network that set it up instead. So with the name transferring to what is now Red Bull Racing Australia, the Red Bull Holden Racing Team or whatever it became, the Vauxhalls were now going to be run as Walkinshaw Andretti United. Hello, it's Editing Aiden here. Just to clarify a couple of things on the whole name evolution of the Andretti operation. When Andretti bought into Team Green, it became Andretti Green Racing, and that's where it was running the Jim Beam car for Wheldon, the Canadian Club car for Franchitti, and that sort of thing. It wouldn't be until 2009, when the restructuring of the company was complete, that it became Andretti Autosport, with Michael as the sole owner of the whole thing. It wouldn't be until 2023 when Andretti and Dan Tauris, which is probably pronounced Tauris like Toaster, the village near Silverstone, but I've made my bed with the pronunciation so far, and it was only in 2023 that it became Andretti Global to coincide with the parent company set up by Andretti and Tauris to take everything under its umbrella, and then they could go after this elusive Formula 1 entry. I hope that's helped with some, bits and pieces. It probably hasn't, so we will just move along. But with the input from the Gamebridge guy, which is a much better name than the MyPillow guy, Andretti has been able to expand so much in recent years. As well as IndyCar and Supercars, the Andretti name is now involved in Formula E, Extreme E, Indy NXT and IMSA, and has a long list of drivers attached to them. Some examples: Felipe Albuquerque, Jenson Button, Colton Herta, Katie Munnings, Marcus Ericsson, Jamie Chadwick, Jake Dennis, Timmy Hansen, Chaz Mostert, Marco Andretti, Gabby Chavez, Brendan Hartley, Ricky Taylor and Louis Delatraz, to name quite literally 14. And if you're British and have kids who were toddlers about, 10 years ago, Katie Munnings' name might seem familiar. She had a show on CBeebies that was essentially Top Gear for toddlers. But the final hurdle for Andretti has been, at least in the last 2 years or so, Formula 1. Andretti wants in to Formula 1. They're hoping to bring GM with them, and seeing GM branded cars on the grid would be pretty cool, especially if they brand the engines Cadillac or Corvette. The FIA has been pretty cool with Andretti coming in and had approved the team onto the grid for either this year or next year, but while the FIA has been of the opinion of more teams, fewer races, one of the few good ideas that Mr. Sulliam has had, given that he's been off on one in the news lately saying that the biased British media, TM, has got it in for him. The commercial rights holders, on the other hand, have given Andretti a solid no. I don't know how much further it's progressed, if it has at all, but at the very least an antitrust lawsuit has been filed with the United States Department of Justice to see if it can be overturned, but I've not heard anything about that since it was filed. So it begs the question as to why the hell Andretti is handing over the reins of the company that has his name and the name of his legendary father, who is US racing royalty, to the Gamebridge guy. This news first appeared in an article on the website called Sportico, which is something I've never heard of, but Marshall Pruitt on Racer has explained that the website is owned by Jay Penske, the son of Roger Penske, who in turn owns the Indianapolis Motor Speedway and IndyCar as a whole. And Roger bought all of that back in, I think it was 2020, and whether that's been a good thing or not for the sport, that's a debate for another video, but I think over the last few IndyCar videos I've done, my thoughts on IndyCar's current situation have been made pretty clear. Sportico's article that first broke the news never gave away the true reason as to why Andretti is giving up his role and selling his shares. Pruitt's sources in the paddock have been saying that maybe there's a bit of a rift that's developed between Andretti and the Gamebridge guy, but Pruitt stresses that no proof has ever been shown to back any of this up. Further to this, the statement provided by Andretti suggests that this is all willing on Michael's end. The statement said, Michael's goal has been to transition to a more strategic role with Andretti Global and focus less on the operational side of the race team. Michael and Dan Tauris have been working closely on developing this new structure, one which Michael is excited to see take shape under Dan's guidance. Michael remains engaged and will continue to serve as a strategic advisor and key ambassador. We will have more to share in the coming weeks after Michael and Dan have had an opportunity to speak to the team. One thing that has also been noted here in the Racer article is that in 2022, Andretti registered something called the Andretti Acquisitions Corporation with the Securities and Exchange Commission, and this has the goal of raising $250 million, presumably to cover the entry fee to enter Formula 1 as the 11th team, should they not take over Alpine Renault with all the stuff that's going on there, although there is the possibility that Andretti or GM could acquire the prototype 2026 engines made by Renault and the IP and blueprints that come with them, so they can help their own entry, because even though Andretti hasn't been approved to be on the grid, facilities are being built. Has all this happened so that there's some sort of financial guarantee, some sort of financial safety net? Is it better to put the Gamebridge guy in charge of the whole operation so there's more control over where that money goes and the investment that comes with it? But I'm not a finance guy, so I don't know. I'm looking at my script here and I've probably just confused myself with my own words, so maybe we'll see more information on this next week. I don't know. One thing that was also mentioned in that Racer article is that Andretti is, in some way, connected to the recent FBI raid at the Rahal, Letterman, Lanigan racing offices in Zionville, Indiana. And this happened, 3 weeks ago-ish, or something like that? Supposedly, this all started when an Andretti team member who moved to RLL in a senior engineering role either took confidential data with them to their new employer or found that Rahal Letterman had acquired some Andretti data. That bit has not been made clear, so this is all alleged and that kind of stuff. You got to be careful, you know? Also, in that Racer article, there was mention that some other organisational changes at Andretti might be happening in the future. The way I can see this going initially is a bit like how Williams went. The Williams family sold up, but instead of keeping the family around, Frank and Claire left Formula 1 entirely, with Frank passing away a couple of years ago. Claire, according to her LinkedIn bio, now works as a speaker and brand ambassador in sports, as well as tech, women's initiatives, and green tech. With Andretti now having expanded so much in the last few years, it's possible that Michael just simply doesn't have the ability to be in as many places at once as he used to be. Or he's realised that he needs a group of people who have the pockets with which to hire bigger teams of people that can then go and run these things. The guy is in his 60s and has just become a grandparent. While Frank Williams was able to work like he did, some people just can't do that. I can see why it can be an out-of-the-blue thing and be incredibly confusing. Andretti was intent on getting a team into Formula 1 as the 11th team, and seemed to have everything in place only for FOM/Liberty Media to be the final boss that he needs to get past to get onto that grid. And now the guy behind the whole thing has been moved aside in what a lot of people are perceiving to be a hostile takeover, among other things. But really, it's probably just a way of making sure that the people with the money are at the head of the table, because it's Taulis's money that's being invested here, the same way it's now Dorilton's money at Williams. So it will probably just be Andretti in name only from here on out, much like Williams is now. I'm sure we're going to hear the phrase core DNA used a few times in press releases and announcements, much like it's been used a lot on this motorsport.com article that I've got up on my other screen. From how this has been reported, Michael will likely still remain the face of the operation while somebody else runs it, which seems like a good way of doing things, because if this is all based around the F1 entry, then Group 1001 becoming the main people at the company makes sense. Michael as the face, as he has been for the majority of the bid to get in, while Group 1001 foots the bill and controls exactly where every penny has to go. So is it a Williams, or is it a Ron Dennis at McLaren, where Ron Dennis was forcibly kicked out of, I won't say his own team, but I think you get the picture with that. Is it just the Gamebridge money, the Gamebridge guy basically saying, look, if I'm in full control, I can control where all the money goes and the investments there and other bits and pieces, but I'm sure this will all be cleared up over the next week or the next couple of weeks. So at the minute, this is very much just humour the rumour, just noise, speculation and conjecture and whatever other words I've got written on here. Yeah, this has not gone well, this video, has it? So then, a quick-ish look at a totally different situation involving Andretti that may or may be not tied into the whole getting into Formula 1 thing. If this has been interesting for you and given you some food for thought or some ideas of your own, do get a discussion going in the designated comment submission zone underneath this video, and while you're scrolling down, get a like on the video too so the algorithm can do its thing. And if you're not already subscribed, do get subscribed and also get that bell on so you never miss out on anything else that I do around here. Massive thanks as ever go out to the fine folk at Patreon that continue to support me at a more personal level, and if you do want to help contribute to the picture purchasing piggy bank or otherwise keep this computer and lights on here, then a link to Patreon is in the description, along with links to Discord, socials, affiliate links and other bits and pieces you might want or need to know. Well, there's super thanks if you just want to do a one and done donation or otherwise top up my coffee cup, and there's also memberships for those that want to do Patreon style support but don't like the whole concept of Patreon. That bit doesn't make sense, but I'm just going to roll with it. But anyway, until next time, I've been AdmiralLaWind, have a great day wherever you are, and goodbye.